Hi guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we are dealing with an account pop-up. So let's see it in action. So if I click on this account, you can see there is a pop over that is showing up with the details of the more details about this user. So let's see how we can create this using HTML and CSS and also some JavaScript. So right now I have a blank HTML template index.html, and also I also have an empty style.css file as well as an empty script.javascript file. So let's first create the styles and then we can follow along from there. First of all, let me link up some icons. You can see we have several icons: the support icon, the upgrade icon, the settings, the logout. So all these icons are coming from Font Awesome. So to get the fonts, we first need to link the CSS to Font Awesome. We can use a CDN to serve it. So we can use this CDN JS to help us get the Font Awesome CSS link. You can see whatever it is linking is just a CSS file to Font Awesome. So head over to CDN.js, look for Font Awesome, copy the middle link here, copy link tag, and then paste it in your document. Okay, that's one step. And then the next thing is to open Font Awesome. So next thing is to open Font Awesome. And before we even continue, let's first link our CSS file. So you can say link CSS and then we link our style.css. So you have to make sure that this style.css matches to the file name you have. So if you coded something new, you just use that new name here. Okay, the next thing is, so our font for the Font Awesome website has loaded. So we can start adding icons. So I'm just going to show you how to add one icon, and then the rest of the icons, I'm going to just copy paste them so that we don't use much time on the icons. All right, so the next thing is that we need some fonts. The font we need is called Roboto. So let's go to fonts.google.com, search for Roboto. And then on the Roboto, click get font on the bottom. And then click get embed code and then copy the import link. All right. And then this one should be pasted in the style.css file. And then before we forget, let's first select the body and then we specify the font family. We can even copy these from Google Fonts. So just copy the font family there. Then we paste that. So we are done with the fonts. And then the next thing is now let's start creating this account pop-up. So the first thing we are going to create is this section, this one that looks like our big button. And then we are going to add the content later on. So I'm going to create a div with a class of account. So I'm going to create a div with a class of account. And then inside the account, this is where you are going to create the account itself. So we are starting with an image. So we are creating this section. So we are going to start with an image and then we have some other content. So I'm just going to use an image. And then for the source, I showed you how we can get random avatar using the pravatar.cc. This one gives us placeholder profile pictures. So the one I chose is number 4. We can click that. I think we can look for something more. Let's use less lady. So this is just a placeholder. You can change the number as you wish to get a new image. So what we have here is just the image. We have added the image and then this content that is linked up together. So we can use a div to display that content. So we can use a h4, Annie Ingram. And then for the username, so we can use p.username. And then this one will be at Ann Gram. Just that, and we are done. So we are first going to focus on the account and then we'll talk about the pop-up later. So you can see now the profile is too large. So I'm going to resize that in the HTML by adding a width of 60 pixels. And then you can see it there. So let's go back to CSS. Let's add the default CSS styles, which are margin of 0, padding of 0, box sizing of border box. I've explained countless times why you need all this. So we are not going to dwell too much on that. So the next thing is that let's now go to the body. Let's place this card to the center. So first of all, you might realize is that the card or this account is too close to the edges. So let's add some paddings to the body, maybe padding to rem. You can see now it moved. And then to place it in the center, we can use flexbox. So we can say display flex, justify content center. Just like that. Let's also change the background color of the body. So there's a background color I chose, which is hash E5, E6, F1. So that's the background color we are dealing with. So the next thing is that let's add a primary color. So let's create a CSS variable. To create a CSS variable, you start with 2 dashes and then say primary. And then we can say hash 28, 27, 39. That's the primary color, and then we can use it on all our colors. We can say var primary. So that's how, so this one is calling the variable. We created a variable here, dash dash primary and the value. And then to use it, you just use the variable and then reference the variable name. Okay, so that's it. Then let's now focus on the account. We say that we have the account which has the image and the content. So something you might realize is that on the finished version, these are side by side. So to make sure they are side by side, we can use flexbox. So we can say account. So display flex. So let's go to the finished version. No, so you can see they are displayed flex by side. So the next thing is to add some borders. So we can add a border, 2 pixels solid black. Okay. Now we need to add some breathing room around this account card. So you can add a padding of padding vertical, we want 0.3, and then horizontal, we want more padding. So we can do 0.8 rem. So it looks nice. And then let's add a border radius. So we can say border radius should be 40 pixels. So you can try around these items and then you can come up with the one that suits you. Okay. So then you can align items to the center. You can see now the image and the text are aligned. So something else you might realize is that we have things that are overflowing. But before we deal with that, let's now grab the image. How can we grab the image? So we are in the account, then you can just grab the image. So you can say dot account direct child image, and then we can say border radius 50%. Now you can see there's some circular stuff going around, and then they are too close to each other, so we can add a gap of 0.5 rem. Fantastic work. So you can see now we are almost done. What is changing is just the image. So we also need to style the username. So to style the username, we give it a class of username. You can say username opacity 0.8, and then font style italic. Fantastic. So we are done with that section. So let's now deal with the pop-up. So to deal with the pop-up, what is our thought process? So in our pop-up should be displayed absolute to the account such that we can now navigate it as we wish. So this account needs a position of relative, and then this one should be positioned absolute to this. So let's go to the account and add a position relative. Now let's go back to the HTML markup and let's create some details here. So here I'm going to create a div with a class of details. Inside the details, now we can start to recreate this. So we are going to separate this into the several sections. The first section is like the header. The next section is the connect account. The third section has the horizontal row. And the third section is the links. So first section, you're going to call it ACC detail. So this is like account detail. And then in the account detail, you have two sections. So the first section, the left-hand section, this is the whole left-hand section and the right-hand section. So the left-hand section has two elements in it. The right-hand section has just the icon. So we can say dot left. And in the left, the first thing we need is the image. And then we can just copy the image we have here. But now we reduce the size. So we can do same image, but now let's do 40. All right, we are done with the image. And then we also have another div inside. So the same div that we had, whereby we have the heading level 4, this div. Okay. So we are done with the left-hand section. Then on the right-hand section, we have, instead of calling it the right, I'm going to give it a class of check, because now it has like a check mark. So, and then inside we add the check mark. So I'm just going to show you this one icon, how we can add it from Font Awesome. We just come here and search check. So we can see the check here. Just click on it to copy. It will open a model and then click on the link itself to copy it. So then paste it. Now you can see the section showing up. And then let's proceed. The next section is this connect. So we can give it, we are done with the account detail. Now we can go to the next section. So this one was the account detail. This one now is the connect section. Let's deal with it. So we can say dot connect. So in the connect, the first thing we have is this plus. So as I said, it's very simple to go to Font Awesome and add it. But for my case, I'm just going to copy the icon. So that's the icon for the plus. As always, you can go to Font Awesome and look for the icon manually. So the next thing is the paragraph that says connect other accounts. We are done with the connect section. So let's move on. The next section is the horizontal rule. You just add the horizontal rule. Then next is the actions, dot actions. So this is the actions. Inside the actions, we have a div. Inside the div, we have an icon and a paragraph. So we are going to start with the first one. So div, the icon, I'm just going to copy the icon. The icon name is ring. And then the text is support. So we can copy this down 4 times. 1, 2, 3. So the next one is the settings. So I'm going to copy the gear icon. That's the gear icon. And then finally also we have the star icon for the upgrade. So we can just, I'm going to just paste these icons. So this one is for the upgrade. And then finally we have the logout icon. So just copy that and then say logout. So we are done with the markup. So if you go back, you can see all the icons are there. But now the layout has been broken. It has broken. So let's fix that up using CSS. So the first thing for the details, we are going to give it a position of absolute. So you can say details, position absolute. Okay. Now it is displaying on top of that. So we can specify where it will start, bottom of 0. Finally, because now the bottom 0 is here, it is sort of tries to draw from there. So we need to push it downward by its height. So we can use the transform, translate y 103%. So I know here there might be some questions. So why did I have to push it by its height? It's because whenever you say a bottom of 0, that stuff is drawn from here. So from here to go here. So if you want to push it down, you have to push it down by its height. Right now I'm doing 103% so that I can give some breathing room for this section. Right? If you have any question, just type in the comments. So the next thing is to add a background color, which should be white. Now, as soon as we add the background color, you can realize that the content is too close to the edges. So we can add a padding of 1.1 rem. Fantastic. And then the edges are too sharp. We can add a border radius of 10 pixels. Fantastic. And then let's also space out the items in the details. So the first section, second, connect, third. So we can use flexbox. So we can say display flex direction column, and then a gap of 1 rem. Okay, so we can see it there. These are the gaps. All right, so that looks promising. So the next thing now, let's grab the image. But instead of going to the image, so we have the account detail. What is the account detail? Remember, the account details is this section. So follow my cursor. This is the section we are dealing with. And this section has two elements, the left-hand section and the icon, check icon. So we can display them flex. So you can go ahead and say dot account detail display flex, and then you can see now the icon has been displayed with this, and then we can say justify content space between. Fantastic. And then now we can align items to the center. Now the icon and this text, they are aligned to the center. Okay, so the next thing is now let's add some gap between them. So 0.2 rem. Finally, let's go back to the details and add some width to it. So we can do a width of 130%. So a width of 100% would be the width of the parent, but now we have increased by 30% so that you can see it's overflowing on outside. So the next thing is now to get to the left hand section. So remember, we have the account details. Inside we have the left and the right, which has the checkbox. So in the left as well, we need to display it flex. We can say dot left display flex and a gap of 0.3 rem. Now you can see these ones are displayed side by side. So the next thing is the image. So the image is located at the left, image border radius of 50%. So where did I get the left image? This one is the left. And then in the left, you can see we have an image. Okay, so the next thing is to deal with this check mark. So we can do dot check. Now remember, the check marks is the class is not for the check mark. The class is for the div overlaying the check mark. So we can say a border of 1 pixel solid gray. You can see the border has been added. Let's make a border radius of 50%. So you can say border radius of 50%. Fantastic. Then let's add some paddings to it. We can do a padding maybe 0.3 rem. Fantastic. And I think that's okay. I think that's fantastic. So let's move on to the next section, which is the connect section. So in the connect, we can say what we can see in the connect is that we need this plus icon and the connect to be displayed side by side. So as we said on the connect, we have the icon and the paragraph. So what we can do is to do display flex here. and then align items to the center. Fantastic. And then let's change the color to bluish color. So we can say color hash 377 5E9. We are done with that section. Then finally, let's go to the actions. Dot actions. So what the actions have, as we said, the actions is basically a div with two elements inside it. The icon and the text. Icon, text, icon, text. So to make sure that we have two perfectly aligned items, we can use CSS grids. So we can do display grid, and then we can write a property called grid template columns. How many columns do we need and how wide are they? I'm going to use 50%, 50%. Now this one divides the space into two. And then let's add a gap of 1 rem. Fantastic. Now we need to display this icon side by side with the text. So we can do dot actions, div, then we can do display flex, and then align items to the center and a gap of 0.2 rem. So we are done with the HTML. So the next thing is to hide this content until someone clicks. So we can go to the details. So we can say, we can add a new property here, selector. We can say dot details dot hidden. Okay. So the dot details dot hidden. So it has to have a hidden class. So whenever the details has a hidden class, then we can do a display none. So let's go to the HTML and to the details and add a hidden class. Now the details is hidden. So now let's move on to JavaScript. So to make sure JavaScript works, let's load the JavaScript. So you can use a script and the source script, and the source will be script.js. The first thing to make sure JavaScript is loading, we can use alert. Okay. It shows up, that means it's loading. So we can now continue. So what I need is that I need access to this content. And when I get access to this content, I want to add an event listener to it, and then remove or add the class hidden to the details. So what we are going to do is that let's grab the account. So you can say const account is equals to document dot query selector, and then we select dot account. So that's the account. And then, so this is the whole account we are targeting. Okay. And then the next thing we need access to is the pop-up or the details, so that we can add the class list or remove it. So we can say const pop-up equals document dot query selector dot details. So we give it a class of details. That's why we can access it like that. So the next thing is to add account dot add event listener click. And then the function that is run is popup dot class list. We have a way to toggle on and off. So you can do manually add or remove, like add, remove, but now we can do dot toggle hidden. So the toggle works like this. So if you pass the hidden, if the hidden is already present, it removes it. If it's not present, it adds it. Okay. Yes. And also we can add an event listener to the, but let's first check. Now you can see it's working. The next thing might, as a homework, I can give you a homework is to try and make sure that it's animating. The next thing you might realize that when I click on the content, it's still going away. How can we prevent that? So we can do popup.add event listener click event. So we can say e dot prevent stop propagation. So if we click, nothing happens. So what we are doing is to prevent propagation from the click on the details back to the parent. So now everything works as we expect. The next thing is to make sure that our account is has a cursor of pointer, so we can go ahead and do. So now everything works as we expect. So thank you guys for watching. That's how we can create a pop-up. It's very simple. You see these pop-ups all over the places. So that's how you create them. Thank you and see you next.